Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to be taking a look at the ZOHD Talon GT. I'm going to start off with a walk around and my first impressions. Then I'm going to show you how I've configured my Talon GT and what equipment I've put in it and where. Next we'll look at some flight footage, and then I'll conclude with a review summarising what I think are the positives and negatives of this aircraft. So here is the Talon GT. I was kind of quite excited about this one, a bit more so than the Dart, and it actually has a lot of very similar features. First of all, I got this from Banggood. The box did take quite a beating on its way over by the looks of it. You see it's broken here as well, but thanks to this kind of big foam surround, it's all come out in perfect condition. So here is an image of what it looks like straight out of the box, all of the parts and everything included. And then it only takes 1 to 2 minutes to fully assemble, and this is what it looks like now. So starting at the front, we have a very similar nose, similar design to the Dart. You've got the multiple different pieces of foam to put inside here, so it will take any kind of HD camera that you want. It looks like a slight difference with the Dart is they've kind of cut out these holes at the bottom to match this grille, which will allow the air to actually pass through rather than just getting blocked. Looking inside the first bay, you again have the same as the Dart. You've got the battery tray with the ZOHD strap, and it already comes with all the wiring in place with an XT60 ready to connect to your battery. The next compartment, both compartments are just magnetic pull-off. This one is for all of your electronics. So again, the same as the Dart, you have the flight controller plywood, which has the 4 hexes there, the same space apart as a standard flight controller. Again, same as the Dart, we also have these nice connectors on the wing, so that when you slide the wing in place, it will connect your servo for the aileron, but also whatever electronics you put out on the wing. So if I just turn this wing over, you'll see that the servos, or electronics and linkage is already pre-installed. And again, you get these cut-out pieces here which just slide right out, so you can mount your electronics in the wings, so your receiver, your video transmitters, and then a nice little channel for the wiring. And you just simply connect it to one of these servo extensions, which is currently not in use. And then when you slide the wing on, that connector there just links the electronics in here, and you have the servo cables here ready to plug into your flight controller. Something ZOHD did on this, which they didn't do on the Dart, was they've marked up where you might want to create a hole so that the antennas can go through to the electronics bay under the wing. And they also created a spot specifically for your GPS receiver. Now, if you're like me and you're going to be using this nice small one, then that will fit in there just nicely. But a lot of people I know do use this GPS puck, which definitely will not fit in there unless you want to take the casing off, and then maybe it might fit, but it doesn't seem ideal. This cover simply just pulls off, and there you go, there's your space for your GPS receiver. There's also a little tunnel there, so you can send your cables into the electronics bay. At the back here we have this tail assembly, which is really quite neat. It's so easy to take on and off. It comes like this out of the box, pre-built, so you've already got your servos and your linkage installed. And as you can see, it's got another one of those connectors, so once you put it on, it automatically connects to this here. And we also have the same power system as the Dart. So we've got the ZOHD 40 amp ESC, which does come with instructions, so you can fully reprogram it. And then the same motor, which is the ZOHD 1300 kV. So the tail is so easy to put on. I can actually do it with one hand like this, slide it in there, push it onto that slot, and twist to lock it in place. On the bottom of the aircraft here, we have this fin assembly. I'm not too sure how durable that's going to be during landing. In fact, you get a spare one with this plane, which makes me think that they might be expecting themselves that this isn't going to last forever, so we'll see how we get on with that. The other thing you get is this model stand. So if I put that in there, now ZOHD claim that this is for storage and also to keep the plane nice and level for when you're calibrating your flight controller. On the bottom of the plane you have this really nice big plastic skid, so that should offer it quite a bit of protection during landings. So it seems like a really well put together plane. It feels quite solid and I'm looking forward to giving it a good test flight. Okay, so next we're going to take a look at the configuration of my Talon GT. I'm going to show you what gear I'm using and where I've installed it. Just a quick note before we start is that everything you've seen so far is included in what you get for this plane, as it is a plug and play item. So if you did want to fly line of sight, all you need to add is a receiver and a battery and away you go. Like most of you, I will be flying this FPV, so therefore I have installed a flight controller and the video gear to go with it. Everything that I have put on this plane, I will put links to in the video description below, and I will also put a link to the plane itself. To start with, at the front here, I will be running one of my standard Foxeer FPV cameras, and I'll be running the RunCam 2 HD for my high definition video. Moving on into this bay, so for the batteries, I will be running 2 of these quad batteries in parallel, which will give me around 3 amp of 4 cell power. 2 at the very front hits the CG perfectly. Moving on to this electronics compartment, here I have installed the Matek F722 wing flight controller, which is running iNav. I have done a full video on this, a full review, and I've walked through all the wiring and the entire setup on this aircraft. So if you want to see that in full details, I will put a link just here to that video for you. And because of that, I won't go into too much detail here, but I can tell you it is a great little flight controller. It's super easy to install because there isn't the need for any of these external BECs, and it just works really well. The GPS for this flight controller is just stored underneath this hatch here. These receivers are really good value for money at around $15. They just work so well and they're super small. Okay, to show you the remaining electronics in this plane, I've just flipped it upside down. As you remember earlier on, I showed you the little compartments out on the wings that are designed to take your gear. So what I've done is I have my 1.2 gigahertz video transmitter here, and I have my Dragon Link receiver out here on this wing. Now, these compartments weren't big enough for this gear for me, maybe because I'm using UHF and 1.2 gigahertz. It's not quite as common as using the smaller gear like the 2.4 gigahertz receivers and the 5.8 gigahertz transmitters. So if you had those, you'd probably be able to fit them in without having to cut out any extra areas like I have here. One other thing to point out as well is that actually these channels that they put in for the cabling, for me, they definitely weren't wide enough, so I had to use a tool just to cut a nice bigger channel through there in order to make that fit. And on both sides, I've just simply used clear packing tape to cover that up, stop it from falling out, and also just keep the underside of the wings nice and smooth. Again, same over here on this side. So a quick note just to say, I didn't open this tail section at the back because nothing has changed. It's completely stock in there, no need to touch that. So that is all the electronics installed and this plane ready to fly. What I do quite like about this is that they did think about every single component that you might put into this airplane. I don't think I've ever seen a model have a space for a receiver, a video transmitter, and a GPS already built into the model. So I do like that. That made it a lot easier to install on my gear. So this was the maiden launch, which was fairly uneventful. It doesn't like to fly as straight out of your hand as the Dart does, which kind of almost feels like it's in launch mode. but it's still not a hard plane to launch. Since the maiden, I have flown this maybe another 5-10 times, and not every launch has been quite as smooth. Looking at this footage, one of the things I really like about the Talon GT is that it feels very stable when you're flying it. Normally I tend to fly larger planes such as the Sky Hunter, and I do this because I love the stability that gives. So it's really great to see a smaller, more compact plane that does feel like it has some stability to it. Having said that, I haven't really flown this in any winds above maybe 12 miles per hour, so maybe on a windy day that might change. It's stable enough that I feel very confident in getting nice and close to the ground like this. So in a mixed flight on this plane where I'm using some high throttle but also doing some cruising, this will stay in the air for around 20 minutes using the 3 amp 4S. I'm sure if you wanted to try and be efficient you'd easily get half an hour. At full throttle this is cruising at around 120 km per hour, but you can also cruise around on as little as 4 or 5 amps, which will give you a speed of around 50 to 55 km per hour. So overall, I'm really enjoying flying this plane, and I do think it flies very well considering its size. One characteristic I have come across which I don't like so much is that when making sharp turns sometimes I nearly end up losing control and crashing. It's about to happen here just after the dart flies past me. Now maybe this is something I'm doing wrong, maybe I'm asking too much of this airframe, or I am turning too tight at low airspeed. But this is something I don't find happening on other models. One time when I tried making a sharp turn at low altitude, I did end up crashing, but it was very close to the ground at the time. This is the damage that came from that crash. I'm kind of surprised at this because it did end up landing on its belly, so you would expect the force would have tried to make the motor go up rather than bend down, but somehow this is how it ended up. Now when I looked at the motor mount when I was fixing it, it did look like there wasn't a lot of glue holding it in place. So what I did was I glued it all back together with hot glue, but I also put a lot of extra glue in around here, and now I think it's a lot stronger than it was from when it came out of the box. So the damage was really easy to fix and it was up and flying again in no time. So I'm going to try and keep this video nice and short, and now I'll conclude with an overview of what I think are the positives and negatives to this airplane. We'll start with the positives. My first one is that it seems like a well thought out design, and I say that because I think it's the first aircraft I've ever owned where there is already a pre-cut slot for every piece of equipment you're going to install. For example, there's a place for a flight controller, there's a place for your HD camera, for your FPV camera, for your receiver out on the wing, for your video transmitter out on the wing, and even a little slot for your GPS receiver. My second positive is that, like the Dart, this is so easy to assemble and it doesn't require any glue at all. You honestly can put this together in less than 2 minutes. My third point is that this plane is really nice and compact, so I can transport this to the field by just chucking it into the boot of my car or on the back seat, but if you really want to make it extra portable, you can very nice and quickly take the wings off. I didn't show it at the start, but to remove the wing you simply need to undo a thumb screw and then you just slide the wing off. This is much better than the Dart because the thumb screws are not being blocked by the flight controller, and also once you've unscrewed them they stay in place and they won't just fall into your electronics bay. My fourth and final positive is that this plane has very stable flight characteristics, especially for its size. It's great that you can cruise at around 4 or 5 amps, but also it can comfortably reach speeds of up to 120 km per hour. Moving on to the negative points, my first one is the one I mentioned earlier, which is the stall on a sharp turn. Again, this could be down to my flying, but as it doesn't happen with other models, I think it's something worth mentioning. So this is my main negative for this aircraft. I do have two other very small negative points. The first one of those is that the channels for the wiring underneath the wing are too small for most cables that you're going to run there. If you're not going to put anything out on the wings, then obviously this isn't an issue. If you are, then I would recommend you use this foam cutting tool which I have. It makes the job really easy, and I'll pop a link to that in the video description below. My other minor negative is that it seems like the motor mount wasn't held in too well. There wasn't much glue holding that there, so when I had that very small crash, it was very easy to rip out. In summary, I do really like the Talon GT. I love having a compact plane that's nice and stable to fly. This honestly is my go-to plane for a quick pick up and fly at the moment. Thank you for watching. If you have any more questions, please post in the comments below.